My first encounter with Christ was when I was a little girl. I grew up in London during the Second World War. London was being bombed every single night. My earliest memory is sitting up in bed with a teddy bear, calling to my mother and saying, "Are we going to the shelter?" Because I could hear the airplanes going over. My father was a prisoner of war in Germany for 6 years. I grew up very, very frightened. My whole life was just fear. And I was in my bed, wrapped up in the blankets, holding a pillow and just terrified, but just laying in bed terrified. And Jesus appeared by my side and held out his hand. And I put my hand in his and said, "I'm never letting go because I can't handle this without you." And he disappeared. So that was my first experience. Now, I was not going to church. My parents had very difficult upbringings with regulated church that you wouldn't let you do anything. You know, on Sunday all you did was sit on a hardback chair and read the Bible. You know, that was it. So that sufficed me for as long as I was in England. I never did attend church. So then I went abroad. I spent a year in North Africa and I met my husband there. He was an American pilot for an oil company and he got transferred to Canada. And it was in Canada that I became pregnant. When I had the baby in Canada, I hemorrhaged. I hemorrhaged really badly. I felt myself leaving and going down a tunnel, like you've probably heard many times, but I was going down a tunnel. There was nobody with me, so I could hear my husband calling to me, and all I could think of was, "Let me go, let me go," because I was in a lot of pain. And as I got towards the end of the tunnel, there was a bright light at the end of the tunnel. Then I was at the edge of this bright light, and Jesus was standing there, looking at me. And I was coming toward him. And what I could see was this incredible place. And there was green grass, there were trees, there were flowers, colors that I'd never seen on this earth, never. It was beautiful. And there were people. I said, "Oh, Lord, let me in." And he said, "I want you to go back and look after Bob and Alexandra." Bob was my husband. I said, "Okay, I'll do it for you." And the next thing I knew, I was back in my body in the bed. So after that experience, I said, I have to be baptized and make a public declaration of my faith in Jesus Christ. I found a church and I got baptized. And that was my beginning of my walk with the Lord. The next big step in my journey was we went to a church that believed in the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Receiving the baptism of the Holy Spirit was the next greatest experience in my life, because it was like I walked through a door, and not only could I talk to God, I could hear him talk to me. He gave me visions, he gave me words, he showed me things, and it was like a whole new world opened up to me. Bad things happen. The last 10 years of my husband's life, for 9 of them, he suffered severe clinical depression with schizophrenic tendencies, they said. Anyway, it was hell on earth. It really was. He was under the care of a psychiatrist, and they gave him all kinds of medications. None of them worked. I was convinced I had this relationship with Christ, And I just knew that God was going to heal him, just like that. Next day, you know. And it didn't happen. And it didn't happen. And I tried everything. I have laid on the floor, on the carpet, and begged God. I have, you know, anything you have ever heard of the way of prayer, I have done it. For 9 years, I was convinced that any minute now, the Lord was going to heal him, okay? So that was the roughest time of my life. I even considered leaving it because it was so difficult. But at the end of 9 years, they finally found a medication that would help him. We had 1 year of normal living together. At the end of that year, I was supposed to be going on a missions trip with the pastor that I was working for to Israel. And the night before, my husband suddenly stood up and said, "I can't breathe." So I said, "Well, let's go to the hospital." So I took him straight to the hospital, and they said he had an embolism. He died 3 hours later. But during that 3 hours, he thanked me for looking after him. That wasn't a difficult time. It was nothing that I would ever wish on anybody else. But I came out of that stronger. Even though I had believed day after day after day and it hadn't happened, I've never blamed God. I think I became closer to the Lord during that time than I ever had been. And it has continued since, because Jesus said, "I'll never leave you nor forsake you." And he's there. He's waiting for us a lot of the time. Sometimes we try and do things in our own power, and we think we have the answer. And sometimes we just have to give up and go to Christ. And just, "Lord, just show me what to do. Show me what to say. Stop me from losing my temper." It's very aggravating to live with somebody like that. I mean, I've shouted at him and run out the room and slammed the door. I'm not a saint. But again and again, you know, just turning to the Lord every time you mess up, turn to the Lord and go back and say, "Oh Lord, help me. What should I do? What should I say? What should I be doing?"